today, the other Big Ten site editors, and really the other just site editors, period, at the College Wire Network. I mean, the discussion topic was, FanDuel's out with over-unders. And like, this is the time of year to discuss the over-under win totals. And so, USC's moving into the Big Ten. There are 18 teams with win totals to look over. So natural, meat and potatoes, college football discussion for the middle of May, win totals. And, it was fascinating to look them over, not so much about the individual instances, but let's remember, for USC fans who haven't followed the Big Ten very, very closely, it's worth, studying up on the recent existence of this conference that the Trojans are entering. And one really key point is that the Big Ten had a divisional format. So it's not as though USC, USC is going to enter a Big Ten without a divisional format, but the Big Ten's been operating under a divisional format. So when you see a number of these win totals, you might think, hey, isn't one team clearly better than the other, and yet their win totals are the same? A lot of the reason for certain teams having the same win totals is that the teams in the Big Ten West, they were able to play each other. Minnesota, Illinois, Purdue, Nebraska, Northwestern, all able to play each other. They're not playing Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State with nearly the same regularity. So that shielded them. That cushioned their schedules to a certain degree. I mean, they play Ohio State annually. They get to play each other, and that probably inflated their win totals by 1 or 2 per year over the past several years. Now those big teams that had been playing in the Big Ten West, they don't get that same schedule protection. So, that's why, for instance, like Illinois and Indiana having the same win total, wait, isn't Illinois better than Indiana? Isn't Indiana especially bad? But here's the thing. Indiana's been playing Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State every year as part of the Big Ten East. Now Indiana doesn't have that. So Indiana's like on the other side of this dynamic, where if you've been in the underclass of the Big Ten East, now you aren't constrained by that. You're going to be playing more of the schools that have been in the Big Ten West. So your schedule is going to be comparatively easier in the future. But those Big Ten West schools, they no longer get the relative protection they've been getting. I mean, all of this is easier to understand in light of what we're seeing right now in the NBA playoffs. The Celtics just have this primrose path through the East. They aren't playing any of these teams in the loaded Western Conference, and so like it's really the same kind of discussion where, if you get siloed into a particular division that's either really weak or really strong, that's like either winning or losing the lottery. But with the Big Ten getting rid of divisions and going to a more balanced schedule, the teams that have been in the Big Ten West going to have a harder path. Teams that are in the lower half of the Big Ten East, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, they're going to have an easier time of it. So one notable over-under, Rutgers, 6.5. So like Rutgers has a higher win total than Illinois, Indiana, a number of other teams, and Illinois' win total is a bowl game. And, some of that might be Greg Schiano recruiting well. I mean, that's certainly true, but also it's Rutgers doesn't have to play each of the 3 giants in the Big Ten East that it's had to play the past several seasons. So when we talk about these projected win totals for Big Ten teams in 2024, and you're wondering, doesn't that number seem 1 or 2 high? Doesn't that number seem 1 or 2 low? That's really the big thing to remember, is that these teams are no longer operating within the divisional scheduling format that we've seen really the past decade and a half. It's now a more balanced schedule, and so certain teams are going to benefit and certain teams are going to get hit as a result of that change.
So, folks, it's sometimes easy in a situation like this just to say, okay, well, we've got these 4 new teams that are coming into the Big Ten. Let's grab Minnesota's schedule, give it a look. Oh, wow, they've got to play Oregon and UCLA. That's a lot tougher schedule now. Or to Matt's point, Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana. Oh, well, now they've got to play USC and Washington. Wow, that's a tougher schedule. What we did back months ago here at the Voice of College Football, as soon as the 2024 schedule was released, we went through every schedule and we broke down what the previous formula was. And to Matt's point, take a team like Maryland, and even though they are picking up, typically it's not for every team in the Big Ten or the previous Big Ten, the previous core of the Big Ten, but basically they're all picking up 2 members from the 4. That's almost true to every school in the existing Big Ten, that they're picking up 2 of the 4 here in 2024. And what you do, we went through each one. We went formulaic because we removed all the light games that are the same. Okay, if you're Iowa, you're still playing Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska because those are your permanent games that have been assigned by the Big Ten as your rival. So clear those off the deck. And then we made the comparisons from there. And to Matt's point, a Maryland, for example, no Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State for sure, for certain. And then we're only about 4 or 5 years removed from Michigan State being near that class as well and beating down the rest of that division. And then you replace that with, let's say, Washington and UCLA and a third team from an extra team from the Big Ten Western Division. And it was almost cut and dry, Matt, that the Big Ten Western Division teams' schedules increased significantly and the Big Ten Eastern Division teams outside of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State decreased significantly, or not as much as the Big Ten Western Division teams had to increase there, because they not only pick up the potential of 4 relatively good to really good teams out of the pack, but they also no longer are guaranteed to play all 6 of those other Big Ten Western Division teams. They're typically only playing 3 now, and they're picking up more of the East as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple math that you can't play all of your soft buddies that you used to have, and that with the hopper being now mixed up, it was unavoidable that you're going to get a more blended schedule. And if we just look at the 4 new arrivals from the West Coast, like this year, only UCLA would qualify clearly as a weak link. I mean, we can debate how strong Washington's going to be, we can debate how strong USC is going to be, but like UCLA is the only team that you look at and say, that is going to be a particularly vulnerable opponent. USC, Washington could have very good seasons, and Oregon is expected to have a great season. So yeah, like you're just not getting that soft underbelly if you're anymore. If you are one of those former Big Ten West schools. Getting some comments in the chat about justifying this. We're not justifying, like we're not saying whether this is good or bad. We're just analyzing schedules. We're just calling balls and strikes, really. Like we're not saying how great this is. We're just noting that, in terms of if you're trying to figure out how many wins a Big Ten team's going to get this year, this is the dynamic you need to be paying attention to. We're not editorializing saying, wow, this is just wonderful. This is just a life-transforming moment. Or this is an absolute disgrace. We're not really venturing into either avenue of thought. We're just looking at, if you're seeing an over-under win total and you seem perplexed, we're trying to give you some background and perspective on why that might be the case.
And again, folks, just take Iowa as an example. They are designated now by the Big Ten to keep their rivalries each and every season with Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nebraska. I know that doesn't sound like a murderer's row, but I think if all of us who know Big Ten football would project what 3 schools would you want or least want to play out of the old Big Ten Western Division, those 3 schools, especially Wisconsin and Nebraska, have ceiling. There is upward mobility there, as opposed to For Iowa, there is no longer a guarantee of playing Purdue, Northwestern, and Illinois every season. So those slots now go to the West Coast, and they go to Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and sure, they could pick them in Indiana from time to time, but it's most likely going to go in a more difficult direction for Iowa, for example.